I remembered to record this time. So I'm recording. So anyways, Kieran Gaya has a couple masters in architecture. He's currently finishing his doctoral thesis in Dublin on the city of Islamabad, and particularly its mosque and presidential palace, and how the city was established as kind of the first cities intentionally designed to be Islamic. And so without further ado, Kieran, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Nice to be with you today in this sort of cross-Atlantic gathering. Let me see if I can get the whole sharing screen going, and I'll show you some pictures. If I can get it. Hold on a second. That's not the right one. Okay, more technological stuff going on here. Let me see if I can reduce this and open the other one. PowerPoint. Okay. Bear with me.
Is that better?
Okay. Share screen. Well, it's not going to where I want it to go. We did it before, but now
Want me to give it a try?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Let's see. If it's working now, then it should be okay. Can you see it?
There we go. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead and maximize it. And
Yeah. It's deciding to act up on me. Hold on. What is this? There's a green screen up there that's not doing what I need it to do. There we go. Can you see it?
it's really large. It's not. It's not what we can't see it properly. All we're
Okay.
seeing is the very bottom
Okay.
eighth of an inch of the
Now,
screen.
can you see it now?
Now we got it.
Okay, let's see if this works, because it's kind of strange. I've not used this template kind of
Yeah,
being
that's
on
good.
top of it. Yeah. It's saying that it's paused, but it's working for you. Is it? Can you see it?
We can.
Okay.
It's not in the slide.
If you're okay with this, I think I'm
Screen.
going to stop it and
But we-
start again.
You can see it.
Here, let's try again. Because it's saying portion of screen.
Let me go ahead and try.
You try. Because here it's not. Oh, wait, I have it. Hold on, Jim. Hold on.
Okay,
How about now?
much better.
Okay, perfect. Yes, all right. Welcome again. And everyone can hear me fine, so I'll get started. So Pakistan
Go ahead and start the slideshow.
Yes.
Either way.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Can you see me? Can you see everything?
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. So in 1947, the territories of British India were about to become independent. And the Muslim League decided that there was a need for their own territory where they could go to, because they were afraid that the Hindus of India would retaliate and start destroying their homes and things. So the country of Pakistan was created in 5 days by one British person who came over and decided that this part and that part was going to become Pakistan. So actually what happens is, what you see on the map here is Pakistan, but you also see Bangladesh. But at the time in 1947, Pakistan was West Pakistan, which you see in the green, and East Pakistan, which you see as Bangladesh. So this is one country that was split by about 6,000 kilometers between them. one country with another territory in the middle, actually two other territories in the middle. And Pakistan, West Pakistan itself was split between the fact that the region of Punjab, of people who speak the same language and are of the same culture, was divided between East Punjab, West Punjab. You see Sindh there, you see Quetta, you see Balochistan. All these were closer to Afghanistan in culture, but Sindh and Punjab were much more Indian in culture, and you have this division. So from 1947 until 1958, the country is trying to figure out who they are. People continue to speak their own language. They have their own ways of doing things. They have their own creativity. They remain regional. They continue to have an identity that's connected to the language, to the cuisine of their actual region, not as a country. And this is a brand new country that doesn't know who they are, what language is the official language, or anything like that. So between 1947 and 1958, they start figuring out how to structure the country, come up with a constitution, and also decide on an official language, which they decide to be Urdu, which is very strange considering that to this day, only 8% of the population of Pakistan speaks Urdu at home. So it's an official language that no one really uses, and they just watch on TV and hear the news and read the paper to this day. It was the language of an elite that came from south of Delhi in India. And because they were the original ministers, presidents, and prime ministers, they picked the language that was convenient for them rather than what was convenient for the 100 or so million people that live there. So this blue line that you see on the map is called the Grand Trunk Road. It's very important because it was what connected Asia to Europe back in the day, even all the way back from Roman times. The British used this known path that the caravans were going on and everything to build a road that would connect land-wise through Europe all the way into, well, Eastern Asia. So you see this here. So in 1958, there's a coup and a military leader named Ayub Khan becomes president. And he decides that to give identity to the nation, they need a new capital city. They need a capital city. They've never had one. Up until then, Karachi functioned as a capital city. It was just a port that the British had left, but it had no real identity of itself. And being in Sindh province, it didn't really represent the new Pakistan. So he picks, conveniently for him, he speaks Urdu. He picks an area that's beautiful, surrounded by mountains, very close to the most important military fortress of the country, where he was a general. So next door to where he was, so that he could keep an eye on it. And the furthest away they could go from Karachi, so that all the powerful families and all the old power structure of that region would shift over. So you see on the map there, there's Islamabad. They decide on the name Islamabad because Pakistan itself means the land of the pure. Pakka is a Persian, Hindi, Urdu word, which means pure, authentic, real. And they had decided on that for the name of the country. So the land of the pure. So they choose their capital city. And since the nation exists because of Islam, because they decided that they needed a Muslim territory, they decide to call the capital city Islamabad. Abad in Persian and in Urdu means abode. It's very similar actually to the word abode. And Islam obviously is Islam, to prostrate oneself. So this is a more recent aerial view of the whole city that was built. There was really nothing here except about 5 small villages. So architects were invited from all over the world. This was, some of you will know this, the Marshall Plan, which was about rebuilding Europe, but also the ex-colonies. And also the Ford Foundation was very involved with financing. India had refused to ally itself with America in the Cold War, but Pakistan agreed. And through that, funding came for this capital city as well. So there are lots of jokes about the fact that these initial architects who came from Europe and America were CIA spies. So in this plan, you can see the main boulevard. You can see that little white building there right under the mountains. So as we know, those of you who've traveled, religious cities tend to put the most important religious building in the city center, whether it be a mosque or a cathedral or anything like that. The most important monuments of a religious city tend to be in the middle. Washington, D.C. is very interesting because the monuments are meant to be at some level secular. They're meant to represent America rather than represent any specific religion. So you have the Lincoln Monument, you have the Washington Monument or Memorial, you have the White House, you have the Capitol building. These copy architectural styles from Europe, mostly the Greeks and the Romans, because of republic and democracy. With Islam, they weren't really sure who to copy because they could copy what was left in India, or they could invent something new. They could look to what didn't exist at the time, but Saudi Arabia. They could look to the Ottoman Empire, to all the mosques that were built in Turkey. So they look also at some of the local typologies, they call them. So this is a shop front. So these architects who are coming from Greece, from Italy, from the US, from the UK, from Scotland, they walk around, they're taking pictures. These are very old pictures. They're what, 1950s, so 70 some years, 60, 70 years, and they're from the archives. So they show some of the typology. These are wooden and brick buildings that were built by the locals for housing. So you see some of the windows and things. So they were trying to figure out, shall we look locally and create something that looks, that the local people would be familiar with. So if you look at this shop front here, and then you get to see the new shop front made of concrete that the architects built. This was built by Doxiadis, who was from Greece, but he was supported by the Ford Foundation. Then you have some apartment buildings, school. This is way at the beginning when they're starting to plant the trees and get everything ready, and it looks very pristine and clean. All these are precast concrete pieces that were built locally and then moved to the site. This is one of the official buildings built by Gio Ponti, who was Italian, and you see the mountains in the back, and he tries to emulate a little bit what you see here with these windows. You see these screens, he tries to do a little bit of the same thing. Then we have the Presidential Palace, which was built by Edward Durrell Stone from the US, from Arkansas. He's also famous for building the Museum of Modern Art in New York, which some of you may have visited. So this is very interesting, sort of I call it a bit of a wedding cake, a three-tiered, but it looks very fortress-like intentionally, because of course this most important president was also a general, and it's all about security. And the buildings on the sides are other government buildings. So now let's talk about the mosque, which is my main topic for you this evening. This is one of the most important mosques in the Indian regions. Some of you will think that it looks like Taj Mahal, which of course it does, because it's by the same emperor who lost his wife and was so sad and had the Taj Mahal built, had this, which remains the largest mosque in India, had this built in Delhi, and it's called the Jama Masjid. So these were some of the typologies that had been developed in the 16th, 17th, 18th century India as the British was slowly starting to come in. This is, so in Pakistan, the modern Pakistan, there was a city called Lahore, where the same Shah, the same king that ruled and built the Taj Mahal, Shah Jahan, he had Lahore as his capital for 10 years. A lot like in the Bible with David running from Saul and Absalom running from David. The story of the Mughals in India is very similar. Each father, having his son take over his throne, running away, coming back. This was all going on at the same time in the 16th and 17th century. So Shah Jahan had his capital for 10 years in Lahore, and he built this mosque, which you get to see the inner courtyard here. And then he built this one as well in Tata, which is closer to Afghanistan. And all this kind of tile work is still very popular in Uzbekistan, Kurdistan, any of those places, you will still see 20th, 21st century mosques built with this typology, spreading all the way out past Iran, because this Mughal Persian style was sort of predominant throughout Asia. This is inside a courtyard of a palace. It's called the Moti or Pearl Masjid. Moti means pearl in Urdu. And it's all white. Again, very similar to what you would see at the Taj Mahal. So the first architect on site, Doxiadis, the Greek, he built these neighborhood mosques. They are simple, they're for local practice, but they're not really representative of the nation. They have nothing that says, well, they say modern, but they don't have much of an identity. They're not grandiose, they're not big, they're not monumental. So in 1966, the King of Saudi Arabia visits Pakistan on a diplomatic tour. The oil crisis hasn't happened yet, so there's money in Saudi Arabia, but not as much as there was later on. But he visits Islamabad and he says, I want to donate money for you to build your mosque. And so there's a competition, and this Turkish architect named Vedat Dalokay wins. He's from Ankara. He studied in Istanbul, Germany, and France. And he says that he starts looking at the beginnings of Islam. This is Mecca. This is the Kaaba. The Kaaba is the oldest monument of Islam, even though it predates Islam. It was taken over by Muhammad, who placed a stone in there, supposedly left by Abraham. And this is where everybody goes on a pilgrimage every year. So he looks at this cube as the holiest of holies of Islam. This is a close-up. It's kind of a white building, but it's covered by this black cloth that's washed and cleaned every year and replaced. And you see all the pilgrims there at the bottom, washing their feet, getting ready to pray. So he looks at this cube and decides to be inspired. So these are his conceptual drawings, if you get to see these. At the top, you just see the cube, and then he starts kind of drawing these geometric things. So if some of you know about Islam, they are quite against figurative representations, and everything is much more abstract. And of course, mathematics as we know it, and we have Arab numerals, it's all connected to the fact that the Arabs were very into geometry, into algebra, into all of these calculations. So Dalokay takes these ideas of the cube and the perfect square and the golden circle, and he creates these shapes, pyramids and triangles, and he starts going forward and he designs this building. So you have basically what he said, and he was very clever, he was a political person. He said, this is the Bedouin tent of the Saudi Arabians protecting the holiest place of Pakistan that emulates the holiest place of Islam for the whole world. Every single person of Islam, every single Muslim in the world faces Mecca when they pray 5 times a day. So the holiest of holies gets sort of transported into Islamabad, the capital city of Pakistan, the land of the pure, and the city of Islam. And this building is paid for by the Saudis. And this is the drawing. And so the building then, oh, sorry. So the Grand Trunk Road that I showed you earlier, this is it right there, kind of splitting up and wrapping around the valley. And so arriving into the city, this is what you would see. So you get to see this monument. Of course, there are those who hate this building and they say it looks like a toad, just kind of crouching there ready to jump. And then there are those who love it and say it looks like a modern Taj Mahal, it looks like a Bedouin tent, it looks like an Ottoman temple. It's always like that, depending on whether you like it or not. This is the view from the Grand Trunk Road. So this is arriving into Islamabad. Let me see. So this is an aerial view, and you get to see all the mountains around. And of course, you get to see the direction of Mecca by the fact that if you see, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but basically you enter here, there's a big platform, and then you enter the building here. So this is the wall that faces Mecca, so Mecca is in this direction. This is a bit closer. A lot of water features, reflective for cooling, very much a part of mosque architecture throughout the world, that water features are essential. So you have another view here. So this view is from the balcony of the presidential palace that I showed you earlier. And so what is interesting is that all the main roads of the city, coming from south, from east, from west, arrive actually at the presidential palace. So that becomes the focal point of the city, and the mosque is put outside because throughout the 50s and 60s, all the new constitutions of Pakistan were trying to emulate the US Constitution, where there is, let's say, in words, a separation between religion and government, which is very awkward for a country that is founded for the sake of Islam, of giving a space to Muslim people from the Indian territories to go live. So there's this kind of conflict of interest going on there where the government wants things to stay secular, but the country exists because of religion. And so they have this sort of awkward dance. I always call it like children when they hold their hands together and they twirl and they lean back. And if one lets go, both fall down. And this is the sort of arrangement that to this day, Islam and the government of Pakistan have. One cannot fully exist without the other. So this is a view of the building at night. You get to see a little bit of the architecture. I'm going to take you inside, don't worry. I like to show the outside first and then slowly we get in. So this is where you would arrive from the city center and you would get to see this view. It's kind of interesting that you don't arrive to see a symmetrical view of a building, which was very popular, of course, most churches and cathedrals and everything. You arrive, you see the whole facade, you see the whole thing. Here you arrive on the side, which is a little bit awkward, and yet you get this full sense of the tent. Maybe if you arrive to the front, you wouldn't see the same tent effect, but this is how the architect decided to place this on the side. So you arrive, you go up those steps, there are some ramps as well, and you arrive on this platform that I was showing you earlier. So everything here is white marble and white concrete. Very neutral, not very decorative, but the idea again was that modernity had to be neutral and simple tones, and they wanted the city to look modern, but also there's a kind of a token sort of hat to the Taj Mahal saying, this has minarets, this is not a tomb, it's not a mausoleum, but it still wants to say, we came out of the Mughal Empire, we are the second generation of Muslim rulers 300-400 years later. So then you have, so this portico that you see there with the shading, of course, some days are very hot. Winter is cold in Islamabad, there's snow, but summer is very, very hot, about, well, what you would say 100 Fahrenheit and up. But as you see, there are all these different porticos for people to find shade as they wait outside to go in. So this building, including the outside, can have 120,000 worshippers. So for all the big gatherings and the festivals, there will be about 120,000. Inside, up to 20,000, which makes it just really, really big. It's right now, it's the 5th largest mosque in the world. Sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction. There, this is inside. So very simple. In many ways, trying to allow as much natural light to come in as possible. There's the centerpiece. So this is a big, huge chandelier made with bronze. And there are about 1,000 light bulbs in that one. And also, I don't know if you see, there's a ring of lights also. This is how Dalokai tries to show that he is Turkish. This is sort of a token of the fact that all Turkish mosques have domes. So he uses the dimensions of a dome and makes this big circular thing, but only for the light. And all these sort of openings in the ceiling They're glass, natural light comes in, there's a right kind of shading, and then as the evening approaches, artificial light slowly comes on with the dimmer, and so you feel that it never goes dark inside. And that balcony that you see right above the entrance, that's the women's balcony because they keep women and men separate during prayer time. There you get a better sense of that whole ring. So 1,000 light bulbs in the middle one and 1,000 light bulbs in this big circular ring one. So you can imagine how much light is going in there. I would say very hot as well when the light comes on. Can you all hear me? Hello? Okay. Thank you, Carol.
I can hear you.
Because I was paused for a while, so I wasn't sure what was going on. Wi-Fi. All right. So good. Let's carry on. So every mosque has to have clear indication of where Mecca is. Jim is saying, what's going on? Can you hear me now? Yes? Okay, I'll carry on. So here.
Yeah, we can hear you. We're at the Faisal interior with chandelier picture.
Yes, very good. Yep.
And we missed the thing on the lights that are both natural and artificial.
Okay, I will explain that again then. So here, this is at the entrance. If you look at these that you see on the side, the sort of crevices or little crenulations, that's glass. So there's glass that allows light in, double glazed, and as the evening approaches, artificial light comes on slowly through a dimmer, and so you never feel that it will go dark. And the lighting is so good that it feels like there's still daylight even when it's completely dark outside. So there you have another view, and the circular one emulates, it's exactly the same size as the Suleiman Mosque that's in Istanbul that Dalokay loved. And so he thought that he would connect the two just by the size of this big ring of lights. So here you have what they call the mihrab. So every mosque has to make it clear which direction Mecca is. So in this one, you have, which is interesting, usually they just put some kind of sign, a little protrusion. But here you have some steps and you have a reef. And there's mosaics. Local artists made these beautiful mosaics. They're all geometric because they do not believe in figurative or representative art. Abstract, yes. So the steps are interesting for me because nobody climbs them, but they're supposed to somehow give the sense that you're going up to heaven. This is what everyone would face while inside the mosque for prayer. This is kind of a lectern because this is where the imam would go on special occasions, special festivals, Eid and such, from which to preach. If you see that there are screens, and then next to this elevated lectern, you have the balcony of the women, which you had seen here, if you see it there, all the way at the back. So the women's balcony is right above the entrance. So they can, as soon as they come in, they go up the steps and they're in their space and they don't interfere with the rest of the space there. And then this, for me, is very interesting. We are very used to Bibles being left open inside churches and there being some kind of altar. Here, the architect, Dalokay, felt that churches were dark and drab, but he still thought that it would be interesting to emulate some things he had seen in churches. And those of you who've studied a little bit about Istanbul and Constantinople know that the Hagia Sophia, the Holy Sophia, became a mosque, and now it's a museum. It might become a mosque again. So the typology of Orthodox 6th, 7th, 8th century churches was that they paved the way for the way mosques are seen. So here we have a sculpture with verses from the Quran on it in calligraphy, right next to where you would, this is the wall that faces Mecca. And inside there, that fountain is functional, so it cools the whole atmosphere when the weather is hot. Here you have some more of these light effects coming through the windows, which is, I find, beautiful. And in the Mughal times, Taj Mahal especially, they have what they call jallis, which are these kind of screens. And Talokai tries to play around with taking things from Turkey, taking things from India and Pakistan, and putting them here. You have a better view of these artificial lights and the natural sunlight coming in. All right, I'll wrap things up now. And for any questions. So this is the end. This is the top. This is the crescent finial. Instead of a cross on top, there's this idea. I mean, I'm comparing to Christianity, but they basically put this bronze finial of a crescent because the moon is very important to Muslims. So if I will go back a little bit so that you get to see that from far away and get an idea of what it looks like from outside. So here you get to see it there. So it's interesting to me that the building looks smallish, but actually it's huge. The 4 minarets are purely decorative. They use loudspeakers. They don't really climb up a tower and shout anymore. Minarets are inspired by bell towers. The Hagia Sophia had 1 bell tower. When Suleiman built the most important mosque of Istanbul, called the Blue Mosque, he did 4 of them because, of course, that was showing. And that became popular then in the whole of the Islamic world of having 4 minarets as a status symbol. Poor mosques have only 1. Richer mosques have 2, 3, and 4. Any of you who've been to Europe, you know that bell towers on European cathedrals, sometimes there's 1, sometimes there's 2. Some have 4, but only the 2 front ones are functional. So it's a bit of a show. I think I'm done. If anyone has any questions, and I can go back and show different pictures if anyone has any requests of what they would like to see.
Thank you very much. This is fascinating. Really appreciated your presentation. I don't have a question, but I wanted to express that.
Thank you.
Is there any questions here in the Louise Roberts room?
Yeah, well, let me, in retrospect, I'm curious as to what is your dissertation?
Yes, I didn't really
focus
cover
on?
that much because I wanted to sort of take you there. I'm looking at how a country founded for religion has been negotiating through their architecture, which shapes how we feel about ourselves, how they create the Pakistani citizen.
Picking up a little bit.
Oh yeah, you sound robotic as well. Can you hear me now? Hello? Yes? Okay, I'll carry on. I'll try to speak slowly. So I'm looking at how they are negotiating the idea that they are practicing Muslims as a nation, and yet they want to have modern democracy. They want to have a law. They want to have a president, a prime minister, have elections. How do those things work together? The clerics to this day want Sharia law. They want everything to be done through the Islamic rules that are not even from the Quran, but are from the Hadiths and things that were written later. Whereas the government, because they want to modernize, they want to keep growing as a nation, want to keep things as secular as possible where the government is concerned. So what is interesting for me is that they choose intentionally to make the mosque a satellite of the city. It's outside of the city. Religion is very important. There's a sort of a focus. If you think about how you can see it from far away, you can't really see the presidential palace from here, even though the presidential palace is bigger and on an elevated ground. So it's more visible when you are in the city. But when you're arriving into the city, especially from these main roads, you see the mosque from far away. When you arrive, it leads you to the presidential palace. Actually, the road shifts. So it's this play between who's more important, who's in control of who. So in simple words, this is what the dissertation is all about, trying to see how much was intentional, how much happened by default, and how there's been this back and forth over the years between control of power by the religion, control of power by the military, and control of power by, well, the government trying to not be religious. This mosque is used every day. People go there to pray. People go there to sit in the shade and enjoy the beautiful fountains. There's a garden around it. What is interesting is that it does get very crowded during the special holidays. These special lights they would do for when there's a special occasion. So there are other pictures you can find on Google where it's decorated Christmas colors, which makes me laugh for Christmas. Jesus is very important for Muslims as well. So the building is used all the time for special festivals, 120,000. Any major inauguration of anything that's happening in the city, that's government, they actually use this space to do it rather than anywhere near the presidential palace, because somehow there's the feeling that security is easier here to maintain than near the presidential palace. If you know anything about Pakistani history, there have been executions and bombings and killings of prime ministers, and all kinds of things have happened in the history of Pakistan. So for some reason, even government openings and special occasions are celebrated at the mosque much more than at the presidential palace. So definitely the presidential palace is not like the White House where guests come, there's cocktail parties and people are going around the garden. It's like a fortress and it looks like one. This is much more used for all kinds of activities.
I have a couple of areas of questions. This is Lynn speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. I can.
The three things I wanted to ask, can you tell more about the significance of water and fountains and pools in the architecture and in the practicality besides cooling? The women's balcony looks relatively like a small area for the thousands of worshipers. Do the outside areas have sectioned off areas for women? And those are my questions for right now.
Yeah, great. So I'll start with the women's one as well, because that's very interesting to me. So women pray at home in most of Islam, and actually in India and Pakistan, traditionally, women don't go to the mosque. But Dalokai is Turkish, and in Turkey, women do go to the mosque. They always have a section curtained off somewhere for them to be there during special occasions, not necessarily for Friday prayers, but some will go, but it's always much, much fewer than the men. If there's a special celebration of Eid or something, they will cordon off areas of the outside as well for women to be separate from men. So they will have that. I mean, they actually even separate children sometimes. Children in one section, women in one section, men in one section. But inside, the women only are allowed on the balcony. And the balcony can, if I remember well, can seat up to 2,000. It's actually bigger than it looks. So that's there. And the water, yes. Mostly, I mean, from this architect's perspective, it's mostly for cooling, because of course Ottoman or Turkish mosques don't have this much water. In India, there's always been this use of water features that allow for air to, I mean, anyone from Arizona knows about water coolers. So this idea that when the weather is drier, this creates cooling. What is innovative here is that compared to other mosques that have water features, this one has one inside as well, which makes it even, so if you see here, you have some outside, but the fact that there is one inside is very, very unique. Yeah, there you go. So this actually jets up and it really cools the space inside. There's not enough ventilation. These windows don't open as much to let hot air out. So basically the circulation comes through all the doors being open into the space. So that water feature really, really helps. It is a dry climate, so the air cools down with the water feature. I hope that answers your question.
Any other significance about water besides the temperature?
No, because as far as I've done my research, they don't have baptism. They don't have anything sort of connected to any holiness of water. In Mecca, there's a well that is connected to Hagar, finding water to give to Ishmael, who was thirsty, and the angel of the Lord telling her where the water was. But in other mosques that I have studied, as I was saying, the Ottoman ones all over Turkey don't really have a big importance given to water. There's water down in the basement for washing because they have to wash before they go into the mosque, before they go to pray. But that's different facilities. But water features as decoration with a fountain with things kind of, jets coming out. That's almost exclusively for decoration and cooling. So
Thank you.
double.
Any use for candles?
Well, I haven't seen any. In Turkey, they use candles inside the mosque. Here, because there's this whole idea of modernity, it's all electric, all of it. It's concrete, marble surfacing, and electric, electric, electric. It was a status symbol. I mean, in the end, the building started in 1976. So by then, Saudi Arabia had tons of money. The original king who had promised the money died. He was assassinated. Then his son, I think, took over and also died in mysterious circumstances. So by the time the building gets built, Saudi Arabia has gone through 3 different kings, but plenty of money. Initial projected cost was 35 million US dollars in 1960s, but it ended up costing above 80 million, and it was finished in 1986.
And any areas of scriptural calligraphy?
Yes, as I showed you, there's this one here, which is basically just the, God is great and Muhammad is his only prophet. But this here, which is basically a sculpture done by a local Pakistani artist of verses from the Quran. What is interesting that I didn't mention is, so Saudis are against any kind of decoration, including decoration of calligraphy, because they say that people will be distracted, and instead of worshiping God, they will be worshiping the word of God, which I think is a danger for all of us. So they had always avoided. So when the Saudi kings, who still had to approve of the plan and the artistry that was going to go inside, they were a bit nervous because, of course, they paid for mosques to be built. They still do pay for mosques to be built around the world because they hope to introduce through these mosques their own version of Islam, which is Salafism or Wahhabism, which is very, very strict. So to this day, for example, women in Pakistan do not cover up completely. They don't wear the full hijab. They don't cover their faces. But slowly, slowly now, with the rise of fundamentalism everywhere, once in a while, you will see people come into the city with the full covering. But it's still looked down on. It's still seen as being a bit ignorant that it's not Pakistani culture to cover up completely. Yes, you wear a shawl, you wear a scarf, you cover your head when you go into holy places, but it's never been part of, let's say, Indian Muslim or Pakistani Muslim tradition. They wear, Punjabi clothes, salwar kameez and a scarf. They're covered, but they don't cover their faces. So the Saudis were nervous about there being decoration in here. And so this is just a little token. And even the calligraphy is very prevalent in decoration under the Mughals. The fact that the Saudis paid for this, they didn't want any calligraphy. They were nervous even about the sculpture here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good question, because those are my little pet topics. If there's no one else.
I have one more. I have a question.
Sure.
You at the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned Washington D.C. You were
Yes,
comparing,
absolutely.
right? So and you discussed the significance of the church, the significance of secular power, and the significance of the military. So do you think that do you have any view on why the Pentagon is in Virginia versus adjacent to the White House, the Congress, in the district?
That I have no idea about. When I've looked
Okay.
at DC ever so superficially, was only to prepare me to write about Islamabad. I looked at the fact that the monuments were to the great man who started the country, let's say, who founded the country. So it was looking at the establishment of the United States as a democracy, as a republic, and all these things. So the monuments dedicated to them got center stage in DC, but I didn't look at what happens outside.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, and the main church for DC is Grace Cathedral, right? If I remember well. So, and that's not center stage. We all know the Lincoln Monument. We all know the Washington Monument. We all know the White House and the Capitol. Any tourist who goes into the city will go look at those things, the big mall. Those are the monuments. Even the Vietnam Memorial, which is a small monument, and yet it's so powerful, it's so emotional, but it's there, it's on the mall, you can find it easily.
All right.
All
It
right.
is just about time for us to be heading to church service. Kieran, thank you so much for doing
Oh,
this.
yeah,
It's
hope-
been outstanding.
I
Much
hope you'll want to
appreciated.
go with me next time I go there.
Maybe
Maybe
so.
you can come as bodyguard.
All right. Thank you
Take
very
care,
much.
everyone. Bye. God bless.
Right.
Bye-bye.
I think I would fit it. I would. Bye. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy service. Oh, did you? Okay. Kieran, I think oh, he exited. So.